Ah, you've made it, my friends. Welcome aboard. Today, we have a video on something very exciting, something that has been widely requested. We have a video on the cannon. Fire! Oh, and before we get going, subscribe. It helps us out a lot. Now, all of you obviously know about my obsession with Pirates of the Caribbean. This started whenever I first saw the movies. I actually saw Curse of the Black Pearl way later than everyone else. I didn't see it until it was well out on DVD for quite some time, and then a friend of mine asked me, "Have you ever seen Pirates of the Caribbean?" And I said, "No." We watched it, and from then on, I was completely hooked. So as the years went on, Captain Jack Sparrow became one of my absolute favorite characters. And so I eventually put together an almost completely screen accurate cosplay. I'm actually wearing the baldric and the sword and everything that I put together. I made all of this, made the scabbard and such, and I even made a lot of that wig and put it together. And so you can tell I'm just a little bit obsessed. So one year for Halloween, I thought it would be a lot of fun to put together a cannon to do a pirate themed Halloween party. So I started researching. I started trying to figure out how to build a cannon that you could set off. You could put it on a timer or something like that. But really, all the plans that were out there at the time were really, really complicated. They required a lot of specialized tools and equipment, a lot of work to build the mechanism for shooting the smoke out the barrel. And so really, I had to kind of figure it out on my own. And as far as I have seen, nobody else on YouTube has actually done a how-to on how to build a cannon like this. Now, this video is not going to be a complete how-to because I'm working on getting the opportunity to build another cannon like this, but make it even better and cheaper to do than the way that I did it here. And we're going to film the entire thing, and we're gonna do it before Halloween. And so I'm gonna give that opportunity to everybody. If you want to try to build a cannon like this, I'm gonna show you how I did it, and it's pretty easy, not very expensive, and it turns out to be a pretty cool project overall. So really, this video is going to be walking you through the process using my TikTok videos that I filmed while building this cannon. And I'm gonna go into a little bit more explanation and detail while I'm doing this. So I'll be showing you those videos and doing a voiceover to tell you how I went about it. So we're gonna get a little down and dirty with it for just a minute so I can give you the general outline of how it's made. So it's really pretty straightforward and simple. Honestly, the barrel, this is just a concrete forming tube you can get at Lowe's or Home Depot. The carriage, made of MDF or fiberboard, and these little side pieces, I don't know what they're called. I'm sorry if anyone knows real cannon terminology, let me know in the comments. These are just PVC. The interior of the barrel is also just PVC. Now, when I mounted this, what I ended up doing was taking some cardboard and cutting out little washers, basically giant washers, not little. I cut a hole into the cardboard washers for the PVC to fit in. Then I cut the outside edges to make it where it would fit inside of this, so that then it would basically just be spacers to hold that PVC inner barrel in the middle. Then I filled the inside with that great stuff, let it expand, made sure that it was all nice and secure, so it's really, really solid on the inside of this. Now, this outer ring here on the front and the back are things that I added after the fact because I wanted it to look just a little bit more like a cannon. And honestly, this was super, super simple to do. This is just that, you can see it's squishy. This is just that foam insulation that you would wrap around pipes, like water pipes. It is literally just that stuff spread out and then glued on. And then the firing wand that you would use to light off the cannon literally is just a wooden dowel with a bent wire coat hanger and some thin rope that I took and I frayed it just a little bit, ran it up here to the end to look like the fuse. I painted it a little bit black just to hide the fact that I had hot glued a magnet there at the end. The magnet is what sets off the cannon. So whenever you tap this to the back, it looks like you're lighting off the cannon.
Now y'all please forgive the absolute disaster that my workspace in the garage was at this time. This was a bit of a mad science experiment because nobody else has actually done this that I know of. And so this was just figuring it out as I went along. So here you can see all of the materials that I was using. You can see, as I mentioned earlier, the concrete forming tube that the main barrel is. You can see that I've already got the middle of the barrel, the inner barrel mounted with great stuff. You can see the great stuff there at the front. I tried carving it to make it nice and rounded to make it look like the front of the barrel, but it didn't really look the part, so you'll see later on that I did of course modify that. And you can also see I've already got the orange bulb in there. It's just in a small wired receptacle that you can get at any hardware store that you go to. So here I have the hazer sitting at the back of the cannon. You can see I'm testing it at this point just to see a little bit of what it's going to look like. This is obviously the most basic form of cannon that you can get, with just an orange light in a tube with a smoke machine. And so basically this is just the proof of concept. So you can see there I'm showing the bulb. I was going to keep that little flap on there, but it ended up getting in the way for everything, and so I ended up going ahead and cutting that off. So this Arduino programming and wiring diagram from Mike over at buttonbanger.com is amazing. It was a godsend, and I would not have been able to do this project without this tutorial. And so I really had no idea whatsoever where to even begin with Arduino programming. And so I was very, very thankful for this very simple program. Here's a quick explanation of how I used it in the Canon application.
Okay, to slightly oversimplify the way that things work, even though it's not very complicated, I promise. Basically, the Arduino has the code on it on when to fire certain things. So whenever I tap the back of the cannon with the wand to light it off, it has a magnetic reed switch in there, R-E-E-D, reed switch. Basically, it's two prongs that are metallic, and whenever the magnet comes close, it makes them connect, and it completes the circuit. That is just basically pressing a button that tells the Arduino board to fire off the sequence. So what it's doing then is it is sending power to these relays. Now relays, if you're not familiar with relays, they are very simple and very awesome. What they're doing is, instead of running all power through a switch, basically it allows you to take a small low voltage thing like the Arduino and handle a lot more power. If you were to send the amount of power needed through a normal switch, it might burn out. So what it's doing is just sending a signal to these bigger circuits to make the connection. So it turns on and off these more powerful circuits in order to firstly fire off the hazer. What it's doing is basically just pressing that manual fire button. You know, on a fog machine, whenever you press the button to do it, you are just completing that connection. You're pressing the button, you're completing the connection, telling the fog machine to fire. Basically, all this is doing is the exact same thing. I took a couple of wires, I just connected them to that manual button, came out of the remote, and ran it to the relays. So the relay is what is pressing that button to fire the hazer. So it's very simple there. So whenever I set it off, it sends the signal to fire off the hazer, and it's just firing off the hazer a little bit longer so that it has time for that smoke to be rolling out the barrel before it chink chink turns on and off the orange bulb. The orange bulb is just up there in the barrel as well, as you can see in this B-roll. And so it's just firing the hazer and then firing the orange bulb. And those two things are able to be controlled on how long you want them and when they fire off. they're able to be controlled through this very simple control software that I found online, and it allows us to program that Arduino to be a prop controller. And so it also gives you the ability to load on your sound effects to that little SD card that is plugged into the audio amplifier. And so the Arduino is also running to that audio amplifier down there where the headphone jack is plugged in, and it has that micro SD card. That is where the sound effects are coming from. So basically what it's doing is it's just telling the two separate things, the relays and the audio amplifier, what to do so that then the sound effects line up with these physical effects. So it's pretty straightforward and simple, and it's a very easy and efficient way to control a prop.
So here you can see me testing that reed switch setup as I just explained that process. And so I'm just taking a magnet, touching it to the reed switch to complete that connection and test it. Now, I did program this Arduino so that it would reset the effect every 5 seconds. Now, the thing is through that program, you can actually set that reset time to really any number that you want to. So you could have your prop re-perform, every 30 seconds, and then it resets and it does it again in 30 seconds. So, you can really program that in any way that you want to. So the way that this software works is really cool, very straightforward and simple, makes it easy to understand. Think of it just like you would any kind of recording software. Now, yes, you have your main audio track there, which in my case is the cannon firing sound, but then you have your 4 channels of each of the relays. So you can see that I'm highlighting relay 1 to fire for that amount of time. You can drag that little bar later, you can drag it longer or shorter to tell it when and how long to fire off that relay. So basically I have it firing off the hazer first, so that then by the time it fires off the orange bulb, it has enough time for that smoke to have been rolling down the barrel so that the smoke is exiting the barrel at the exact same time as the orange bulb fires off and that sound effect goes off. Now, the one thing I had to do is to give the sound effect more time to get that smoke rolling down the barrel. I did have to put that fuse sound effect before the cannon firing, so that's really the only reason for that fuse sound. So basically, the ability to use this program and have it connected directly into the Arduino, it made it where I could basically test out each of these settings live. So I could hit play in the program and it would play my sound effect and fire off the relays as I had them set up, and I could see the timing and everything while I was working on tweaking those settings. And so that was an absolutely fantastic way to be able to work so that you could quickly and easily figure out exactly how long you needed one relay to go. It was something that made it extremely easy to get this all going as it needed to be. So here's our first look at the cannon with the 2 side supports on and the carriage mostly put together. This is kind of the first point at which I could see it starting to take shape. Now, one thing that I had to keep in mind was how front heavy that tube was, and so that's part of what I'm gesturing at is the balance point on the cannon barrel. So I had to make sure that it had enough front support underneath the front of the cannon barrel. Now, this is about the first point that I can actually see the whole project really starting to come together with all the electronics sort of tucked in there and seeing how it's all going to work and look generally at the end of the project. And so this is an exciting time, and you can see the front of the cannon. I actually had to chop off that foam. I tried putting glazing putty over it, but unfortunately that didn't really work either because it was just over that great stuff foam. So eventually I ended up having to just peel that off, and I made a front face for it out of EVA foam, just glued it on there, and then painted it with the rest of the cannon barrel. I'm also going to use that EVA foam to make end caps for those side support arms of the cannon as well. Now, the carriage at this point is completely blank, but you can see here I have some lines drawn on there. Basically, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my circular saw and I'm going to just score those lines, maybe 1/8 of an inch deep, just to make it look like it is individual boards that make up the construction of the carriage. Then I'm going to go in after that. I'm going to take the Dremel tool. I'm going to score in wood grain lines and put knots in there and stuff. After that, I'm going to go back with a wood stain gel, and that is the type of wood stain that I read is the best for MDF, and it ended up looking a lot better than I actually anticipated. So I'm glad that that turned out like I wanted it to. Now it's time to dress up the rest of the cannon barrel. So you see here the bottom of a dollar store bowl that I cut and then of course glued on there. And then that round part, that is a holiday ornament that was broken that they just gave to me as well. So I glued it on as the rest of the back of the cannon. And here is our first look at the carriage and the cannon barrel sitting together. Very excited at this point to see everything starting to come together. And of course, there's still a little ways to go, but you know, once you get a project to this point, I know all of you understand, it gets to be very, very exciting and fun to see it start to really take shape. So at this point, we're able to put the electronics inside and then figure out how to get the smoke from the hazer into the barrel. You can see I used some cardboard and an old tube and some gaff tape to duct it up in there. So at this point, you can see that the cannon is finished, at least to the point that it was then. I added the extra strips around the front and back at a later time. This was so much fun having on our porch for Halloween, and whenever all of our friends arrived, we all had a blast, pun intended, with firing the cannon and you know, just living out our best piratey lives.
So I hope that everyone has enjoyed this brief overview of exactly how I did this, but also stay tuned. I'm going to be finding the opportunity in just the next week or two. I'm going to be filming a video on how to build one of these from the ground up using a fog machine. Now I will say I have this old fog machine. This is an old Chauvet Hurricane 700 watt fog machine. It's a great little fog machine, but I also haven't used it in years and I don't know where the remote is. So I'm going to be jerry-rigging this thing to show you exactly how to do this. Even if you don't have all the right things for it, I have discovered how to complete the connection on two of these prongs where the remote plugs in to make it actually work. So we can do it in many different ways. I'm gonna make it accessible to everyone to build a prop like this for not too much money and not too much effort. So now that I have shown you how it works, if you'll excuse me, I have one last thing to do. Fire everything! Still